Welcome to the extended version of this lesson on the catalyst. We just covered what the catalyst is, why it matters, and how to make it ask a gripping question. Now, let's cover two main types of catalysts, the secret to perfectly pairing it with your protag, and check out the catalyst in action with an in-depth example of 2007's Juno. To start, let's talk about the two main types of catalysts, which we'll label as prospect catalysts and problem catalysts. Each one works slightly differently, and it'll help to know the differences so you can choose which one is right for your story. A prospect catalyst is a catalyst that presents itself in the form of, you guessed it, a prospect. This is an overall positive catalyst that emphasizes the opportunity for the protag to achieve their want. You can identify a prospect catalyst easily when the protag seems like they have the most choice in deciding whether or not to pursue the goal it presents. And most of the time, they should want to pursue it, since it will lead to their want. Most romances have prospect catalysts, but one clear example is when Harold and Kumar watch the mouth-watering White Castle ad that catalyzes their journey. It's a positive moment, they have total choice in pursuing their goal, and it will lead to their want of satisfaction. You can think about prospect catalysts as treasure maps. The protag goes after the goal to reap its rewards. On the other hand, a problem catalyst will present itself in the form of, you'll never guess, a problem. It's an overall negative catalyst that emphasizes the goal so the protag can return to their normal life. Problem catalysts are easy to spot because it seems like the protag has very little choice in the matter. They would probably prefer it didn't happen in the first place. Most horror stories have problem catalysts. And one clear example is when Hans Gruber bursts into the Christmas party in Die Hard. It's negative, offers protag John little choice, and once dealt with, will return John to his normal life. You can think about problem catalysts as dragons. They wreak havoc until the protag deals with them. That isn't to say that problem catalysts can't also present an opportunity to achieve the protag's want. In Die Hard, John saving the day means John saving his wife, potentially the first step in rekindling their marriage. An even better example is in Prey, when Naru actually wants to fight the Predator to prove herself, as shown by her longing to complete her katamiya. This turns an otherwise problem catalyst into a kind of prospect catalyst, as dealing with the problem will lead to the protag's want. So, whichever you choose, know there can be both problems and prospects in your catalyst. There is one more type of catalyst we should touch on, and it exists outside the prospect and problem dichotomy. It's something we call a catalyst gateway. It will make more sense after we cover the outer gateway, but basically a catalyst gateway is when the protag undergoes a great external change at the catalyst instead of at the outer gateway. The best example is in The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy is sucked off to Oz as the catalyst. In these stories, the protag will spend the next phase clarifying their goal, then commit to it in the outer gateway. One more catalyst note before we move on. When the catalyst strikes, it's nice to give some hint of the new situation the protag will enter in Act 2. This could be geographical in adventure stories, relational in romances, or otherwise. But importantly, it should hint at the treasures and dangers of the path ahead. And most times this applies more to prospect catalysts. Finally, let's cover a trick to make sure your protag is perfectly paired with your catalyst. And since the catalyst is the seed of the premise, and the premise is the seed of the story, what we are actually saying is that we are making sure the protag is perfectly paired with the story. There are two parts to this trick. The first is that the opportunity should have a catch to it. This applies more to prospect catalysts, but it basically means that there is some kind of caveat. For example, in Tootsie, Michael has the opportunity to audition for a television role, but the catch is that the role is for a woman. So Michael must pretend to be a woman. The second part to this trick is that this opportunity should perfectly challenge the protag's flaw. In Tootsie, Michael's flaw surrounds how he treats women. So how much more perfect can you get than taking a protag who doesn't respect women and making them pretend to be a woman? In other words, the opportunity has a catch and it perfectly challenges the protag's flaw. Now, let's see the catalyst in action with our in-depth example.
Juno is a 2017 indie dramedy that follows Juno, a pregnant teen, as she navigates the path of giving her child up for adoption. It's a great story to analyze to help us understand the catalyst, because it shows how a story with a seemingly obvious catalyst may actually need something else in order to work. Our story starts on Juno as she discovers she is pregnant. This is obviously not ideal since she is still in high school. However, within the first few scenes, Juno has confirmed her pregnancy and called her best friend to announce she will be getting an abortion. Soon after, Juno calls a clinic to book an appointment. Now, if you started with the premise of a teenager getting pregnant, the most obvious catalyst would be, the getting pregnant part. In the subgenre of pregnancy movies like Knocked Up, which actually came out the same year as Juno, the ubiquitous catalyst is the shot of a woman sitting on a toilet and going through like 8 pregnancy tests that are all positive. You've probably seen it before. The hesitation is then, what will she do? Will she keep the baby or abort it? And since these are pregnancy movies, the outer gateway is always the decision to keep the baby. This makes the journey pregnancy with the implied story climax of giving birth. But Juno does something different, because Juno's character is already set on having an abortion. There's no need to hesitate after discovering she is pregnant, other than which clinic to go to. But the story is about her pregnancy, so what catalyst will launch her on that journey? In Juno, the real catalyst happens as classmate Suchin, while protesting outside an abortion clinic, tells Juno that her baby has fingernails. Inside the clinic, Juno can't help but notice everyone's fingernails, causing her to freak out and decide against the abortion. So when Juno decides she is delivering the baby, this leads us to the true hesitation, which is finding someone to adopt the child. This leads to the outer gateway of visiting Mark and Vanessa, as this marks the start of the journey proper. And of course, this is a problem catalyst. This isn't unlike in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse when Protag Miles gets bit by a spider and gets superpowers. This seems like it should be the catalyst, but the real catalyst is when Peter Parker asks Miles to stop Kingpin, as this is the call to adventure that leads to the journey proper. Juno does a great job of subverting the expectations of an obvious catalyst. So, when writing your story, you may find a more creative way to start your journey, helping to keep your story original. If your premise implies a catalyst, consider ways of playing with it. It's part of the reason Juno was so impactful. It subverted expectations, helping to launch this indie movie into the mainstream.
You should now have a good idea of what a catalyst is, the 2 main types, and how it can hook your audience. And in the next lesson, we'll explore your protag's reaction to the catalyst in a phase that we call the hesitation.